Everything about my life is change and uncertainty and curveballs. I seek out chaos, maybe? The pivotal moment in my career was at Hewlett-Packard, and Mark Hurd was in the room. And he said, why don't you go away and come back when you can prove that something that you do actually matters? My favorite mentor is Carrie Williard. She's the first person that said to me, you can be doing something bigger. And it changed my life and how I saw myself as a leader in the future. The biggest impact on AI in the corporation is to humans. So it really should be HR leading that transformation. I don't trust AI to make any decisions about people. I would be totally fine if AI took away the soul-crushing drudgery of administrative work. But humans should always be that final decision maker.
You've described your ADHD, dyslexia, and OCD as a superpower.
There's nothing about any of those conditions in your K through 12 experience that feels like a superpower. But then once you get into real life, I quickly realized that the way I see things and the way I'm wired was a benefit. The secret to navigating change is leading with curiosity and humility. I'm super comfortable knowing that I don't know the answer. Yeah, I know that's spicy, but I'm not gonna say it.
Cut. Hi, and welcome to Leaders in Learning. I'm your host, Brandon Carson. I'm thrilled to introduce you to my good friend, Jenny Dearborn. Jenny is an award-winning HR executive, best-selling author, and one of the boldest advocates for data-driven leadership and diversity and inclusion in the workplace. A real-life superhero, Jenny's story is a testament to perseverance, determination, and grit. If you've ever felt underestimated or out of place, this episode is a reminder your differences are what make you powerful. So this is really exciting to circle back around. We've known each other for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Started at Sun Microsystems. When I came in 2005 is when I met you.
Yeah.
And then just the journey we've both been on. It's interesting to kind of get back together and have a conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, let's go.
Okay.
So you've led over your career and lived through big transformations, like scaling global learning at HP, for example, leading with data at SAP, really big companies. What core skills have helped you the most during times of change and transformation? And how can other leaders, especially in this era we're in now, how can other leaders build those same capabilities? What's your advice to them?
Probably the core skill or attribute during times of big change and transformation for me has been leading with curiosity and optimism that whatever happens is probably going to be amazing and fun and positive. So whatever you would say, that it's the opposite of fear. That you go into a change and you say, what amazing thing might occur? And I really am curious about other people's experiences and what could this new software do? And if we were to move into this new country or this new market or this new product line, what good things could happen? And just really coming at it from a lens of optimism. And it seems really simple to say, but you also look around in times of big change and there are people that build walls and put their head in the sand and just are really, circle the wagons and are very, very protective of the past experiences that they've had.
I love the fact that you lead with curiosity. A good friend of mine, Simon Brown, he wrote the book, The Curious Advantage, and he sees that as a core skill. You're mentioning it as a core skill. Are you just innate with curiosity, or did you have leaders model that showed you the way that leaders need to be stewards of curiosity?
I can't honestly think of a lot of leaders at work that did that. I can think of a lot of people in my life, and then I think that that's part of my neurodiversity wiring, is just a lot of imagination and thinking of the world as a really big, complex, interesting, fantastical place, and being really excited about what's around the corner and what changes might happen. I think that that's part of my wiring. Probably the leader that I can think of at work is Carrie Williard, our common boss. A lot of change going on when she led our function at Sun. And I remember that was something that she really brought to it. But prior to Carrie, I don't remember seeing that.
Sort of probe on curiosity a bit more, because especially in times like this, it seems to be really important for not just leaders, but for the workforce in general. Did you get that feeling from your parents, from school, or was it just innate to you that you're always a curious person, asking questions and looking around?
I think innate in me, but also it was really modeled in my grandmother, who lived to 102 and just
102.
102.
Wow. Okay.
And she was born in the time when cars were not all over on the streets, and and then died right after having voted for the first Black president. And she just every time she read the paper, she was like, "Isn't this amazing? Isn't it a miracle? Wow, the world is incredible!" And just was constantly, calling me and writing me letters about how amazing and wonderful all the changes were in the world. So that was just really part of my grounding.
Grounding, yeah. So you're on your third book.
I just finished,
Just finished it?
Yeah.
Each one of them are driven by the idea of data, right? So I'm interested in just hearing your thoughts on, for leaders, how they can take data and insights from data in their day-to-day leadership style.
Right. The first book is the world I came from, which is sales enablement, sales, and all of the data that you have at your disposal in a sales function to prove productivity and performance is very, very clear. Everyone always says it's the easiest to show productivity and performance in sales. So that's the first book. The second is taking those same approaches and algorithms and expanding it farther into leadership. So how do you have a data-driven leadership function? And then this third is across the whole enterprise. And when we were coming up, it was sometimes hard to get the data.
Yeah.
Like, how many people did this? How many people are there? What are the basic information? And so in a lot of ways, you feel like you're done when you know that the answer is 7.
Yeah.
Because it was really hard to get to 7, whatever 7 was. And really now it's easy to get to the number, and it's what does the number mean?
Yeah.
And what is the insight that you have from that number? And this became apparent to me when I became a chief people officer and was reporting to the board of directors in a quarterly metrics package. And you've got one slide to give all of the number snapshots across the people function of your whole organization. And I would go to chief people officers at every company and say, what is your metrics package? Don't tell me the numbers on the inside, just what are your columns and your rows, so that I know if I'm measuring the right things. Because I figured the very best ones they were measuring different things. And what I learned was we're all pretty much measuring the same thing. It's what insight does that bring you. In great companies, 7 is the beginning of the conversation with the board. And at less mature companies, 7 is the end of the conversation. They just say, 7, I'm done. And the board goes, thanks. Now we know it's 7. And so bringing that insight, it's not just being data driven, but it's understanding what does it mean? What is the context? What does this mean in the market? What are we going to do about this? Where does it go from here? That insight and that storytelling with data and all of the context around it, that is what is powerful.
That is one thing I'm getting out of the book as I'm reading it, is the storytelling aspect. So do you see storytelling as a skill?
Absolutely.
So how do you bring all of this together, the ability to derive and get the data, right? And go to the sources, trust those sources, get that data together, get the insight from it, and then put a story around it?
Yeah, I think the storytelling really comes from a deep business acumen. I mean, you can't just tell a story. You have to understand. You have to understand so much about the business to be able to tell that story. So, almost the word storytelling kind of cheapens it, or it makes it seem easier or simpler. It's like Mark Twain said, "If I had more time, I would have made it shorter." Right? It's like if you have a really strong command of the business, you can have a short, precise story that is data-driven, that is incredibly impactful, but you have to have that breadth of business understanding, which is why really the best people in our functions in the future are MBAs, and they're consultants, and they're people that have a really deep business background. Those are the most impactful people leaders.
And to build on that example, context, you mentioned context, that's really critically important, I think, because if you're talking to the board, as per your example, it's a different story to tell than if you're talking to your team.
Yes.
Or maybe even, outside of the company.
Yes, 100%.
So it's being able to have that contextual understanding.
Yeah. And to know, like we talk about, helicopter skills, to be able to, helicopter it up and tell a story in 1 minute that is at this level, and then helicopter down and tell a very detailed story in 1 minute that is the same, it's the same big picture, but it's at a completely different level, and you adjust the data that you're telling and the insights based on who you're talking to and the level. Yeah.
And it seems like, to your point earlier about kind of in the past when we had interesting challenges getting the data, now there's a plethora of data, so you have to mine that.
Yeah, sometimes too much. Sometimes too much
exactly,
data.
To get to the right story that tells that story that you want to tell to that audience.
To get that insight.
To get the insight for it. On a more personal note, Jenny, you've described your ADHD, dyslexia, and OCD as a superpower.
Yeah.
And as someone who also has ADHD, I haven't thought of it as a superpower before. But can you give an example of a time when your neurodivergence clearly gave you an edge?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's nothing about any of those conditions, as you know, in your K through 12 experience that feels like a superpower. But then once you get into real life, I quickly realized that the way I see things and the way I'm wired was a benefit and really different. I mean, that's when diversity is really a skill and a superpower in an environment where everybody's brains are approaching a problem in the same way. And so I quickly learned that my ability to pattern match across huge data sets and disparate pieces of information was really a superpower, and that my brain works particularly well in highly complex, very large organizations. My brain doesn't do so well in a really small company with not as many variables. But, the more dimensions and challenges, the better I seem to perform. So the more complex the environment is.
That's
because I can somehow see the patterns.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's talk about the future of learning and work. Where do you see AI having the biggest positive impact on HR and learning? And where would you not trust AI to make decisions about people?
I don't trust AI to make any decisions about people.
Okay.
I trust AI to make very insightful suggestions to gather a lot of information and be a fantastic aid in helping in human decisions. And I also think AI is going to be great about reminding humans about our biases and reminding us about the rules. And we will set, as humans, let's say for a performance management cycle, we will decide that our structure is, this is the criteria for succeeds in your job. This is the criteria for exceeds. This is the, outstanding, whatever. This is the performance management cycle. And for each of these levels, it's this compensation increase. And we expect a normal distribution, whatever it is. We say these things up front. And because we believe it's not possible to have more than 5% of your employee workforce at exceptional, because that is illogical that it would be more than that. And then you get into the performance management cycle and you convince each other that 50% of the organization is at the highest level. And then at the end of the performance management cycle, you say, how did we do that again? We didn't follow our own rules. Or we didn't follow our own logic. Or parameters we set for ourselves, or whatever it is. And so I think that AI is going to do a great job of supporting us, reminding us, coaching, keeping us on track. But humans should always be that final decision maker. I do believe there is a lot of bias in human decision making. And when we are hungry or cranky, or when our favorite sports team loses, we make bad decisions. Right? I mean, there's so much data to support that. And we need help, but it should always be human at the final decision maker.
When you think about what you've said about the CPO, the Chief People Officer, and their role in this, as AI comes into being integrated more in the workplace, and you mentioned augmentation versus replacement so much and decision making with humans, where do you see the big transformation for the HR function, Chief People Officer, when it comes to how AI can be best leveraged? Is it around speed, efficiency?
It'll be both. It's the AI transformation in the people function will start with efficiency. We will go through the entire talent life cycle from talent attraction to succession and exit and look for opportunities for efficiency gain. So that's kind of wave one. Then the next wave is, where do we find places where we can change the process and take human drudgery out of a process and replace with some sort of automation to free up the human to operate at a higher level within the same process, right? So it's sort of like wave one, you look for efficiency. Wave two, you look for a little bit more effectiveness. And kind of that third wave is when you say, let's completely change the process. Like, do we even need to do talent attraction and employer branding the way we did before? Maybe there's a completely different way that we haven't thought of yet. I don't see too many companies, as I travel around in my role as the Chief People Strategy Officer consulting with HR teams around the world. I don't see too many companies yet completely changing their approach using AI. They're at the efficiency phase and then a little bit more effectiveness, but not yet at the complete transformation of process phase.
I've seen similar things when I talk to HR and L&D. A lot of leaders are saying, oh no, AI is going to actually be a job creator. There's a lot of conversation about what's happening with the workforce jobs, that kind of thing. And I've been advocating, in my last role, I advocated that HR actually play a much more engaged and integral part of AI implementation and adoption across the enterprise. Do you see that happening, especially in the large companies? Is the CHRO or CPO or the HR function helping to drive the strategy around AI implementation?
I'm an advocate of that. I don't see that happening enough. I do see it happening when the CHRO is a business leader. that is an internal transfer that led one of the business units, and that people function leader, they have a great depth of experience leading one of the business functions.
Interesting.
If that person grew up in a traditional HR path, HR generalist to benefits person to whatever, comp person to, then they typically are not the person who leads the HR transformation across the corporation. We're seeing a couple examples now where the head of people also leads IT.
Yes.
And because the AI transformation is seen very much as a technology first, so when that role is combined, then you'll see that. But the biggest impact on AI in the corporation is to humans. So it really should be HR as either leading or one of the key players at the table, leading that transformation.
You've said you feel alive just before redlining and don't shy away from chaos. What have high pressure moments taught you about resilience?
I don't know that high pressure moments have taught me about resilience. I think that my resilience has taught me how to handle high pressure moments.
And where did that resilience come? Where does that come from?
Number 5 out of 6 kids, growing up in a farm town, growing up neurodiverse and seeking stimulus all the time. I run towards a fire. I want to be in the middle of action, whatever that is, and that is super comfortable to me.
That's interesting, because I had a leader tell me once, we want to run to the big problems.
Yeah.
And that's basically what you're saying. You want to run to the big challenges.
Because you have one life, and why not make a big impact and make something really better in the world? I mean, I don't want to go and just do incremental improvements and things like that. I think that I have the energy and the ability to do big, hard things. So whatever that is, I want to run towards that and fix the biggest problems I can find.
And as a leader of people and teams, you've had some big teams. How do you stay grounded so that your teams and the people you lead feel like they're moving in the right direction?
Yeah. I think one of the things I really enjoy about being in a big, complex environment is pulling together that clarity of vision of what are we trying to do here, and pulling the alignment from the bigger impact that the corporation is trying to make, or the organization or the entity. What is going on in the world, geopolitical, macro trends? What role does the corporation have? What is the purpose? What is the goals of the corporation? What strategies the corporation have to achieve those goals? And then based on that corporate strategy, what is our people strategy? And then what are the programs that we need to put in place to achieve that people strategy? So being able to pull that all together, it becomes, I mean, it's hard work, but it becomes clear what we need to do as a function, right? We need to make sure that our humans at this organization are aligned to achieve this corporate strategy within this complex environment. And we need to make sure that everything we do is measurable and has impact, because we don't have any effort to waste, right? And if we can't prove that what we are doing in the people function aligns to move the needle in that bigger thing, then we kind of shouldn't be here. We should be fired, or we should step down or something like that, if we're just doing activity and creating volume without being able to directly tie it to moving the needle for this bigger organization.
What you're talking about, though, is a bit new for HR functions, don't you think?
No.
I mean, have we always been driving with data in the organization, or have we spent a lot of our time on transactional activity?
I think you know the answer. We've spent a lot of our time doing transactional stuff and measuring what we can. But I don't think that's ever fooled anybody. I don't think there's ever been a CEO or a board that says, this seems like the right thing. I mean, we've always done the best we could. This was driven home for me. The pivotal moment in my career was at Hewlett Packard in, I don't remember what, 2010 or something. And I was presenting, and Mark Hurd was in the room, and I was the head of sales enablement globally. And so I put up a slide that said, 1,500 sales reps took this one-day course and gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and 2,000 sales reps took this two-day class and gave it a 4.7 out of 5 stars, and aren't I great? This was like my results, quarterly results. And he said, all I know for sure, based on that data, is you've wasted a lot of time and a lot of money, because these classes cost this amount, and
they're not selling, they're in class.
Time out of the field is this amount. So that's the only thing your data shows, is you've wasted time and money. So why don't you go away? I mean, he wasn't rude. I took it as quite hurtful, but he was being very direct and appropriate. And he said, well, why don't you go away and come back when you can prove that something that you do actually matters? Okay. And so if I can't show that alignment, they should get somebody better to do my job.
So it's bringing the business metrics and language to talent development. Basically. Now, we've been fortunate, both you and I, in that we've worked under a leader that even now, almost 20 years later, she's been one of the most progressive leaders that I've had the privilege of working with. We're talking about Carrie Williard. We're just 2 of the 6 CLOs that she's cultivated.
There's more than that. There's got to be more than that.
You're right. There could be even more. What do you think it is about leaders like Carrie that enables them to develop so many other great leaders? Because a lot of times we talk about, as a leader, you need to be a talent developer. What is it about Carrie and your experience with her that you feel enabled that development?
For me, she was the first leader I had where it was conscious to me that she thought part of her job was my development. And she explicitly said that. And before Carrie, there were, I had bosses, but they didn't see me, or I was just a part of a transactional something. And she was the first person that said to me, I am your mentor. And I was like, what does that word even mean? And she's the first person that said to me, you can be doing something bigger than the role that you're in right now. I think you should do this next role this other role is going to be the next one in your career. And I was like, wait, I have a career? I thought I just had a job. I didn't even know that. And she was like, okay, you do that for 2 years, and then you do this other thing for 2 years. And I was like, what is happening? Like it was amazing. And she really was the first person that ever saw me. And really took it upon herself. I didn't go up to her and say, what should I do in my career? She just said, you need to do these things, and saw me. And it changed my life and how I saw myself as a leader in the future. And I was like, I always have to do what Carrie does.
Those are the breadcrumbs that we can propagate. Right? And scatter around, if you will, impacting the people that we've led through our organizations as well. Because it was similar, I had a similar experience with her in some respect, honing in on the strengths, but not forgetting or leaving aside the opportunities. Right? Coaching and mentoring there, but elevating and pushing the strengths, helping me bring those forward. Right?
Carrie was also the first person that gave me really tough feedback. I think that And it was really clear, hard at the time, but really clear afterwards, that feedback is a gift that you only give to people that you love and care about. And if you don't care about someone, you don't bother telling them that they should have done this better, because you don't care if they succeed or fail in the future. But if you really care about someone and you want them to do better, you'll go out of your way to tell them something that is uncomfortable and hard to hear and hard to say. And she was amazing at it, and really went out of her way to do it several times.
Yeah.
The time I worked for her. I mean, really, it felt like every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it was very clear when it was happening. It was
Yeah.
like, I need you to meet me in my office. I have something to share with you. I've heard this feedback. Is that true? Do you understand how what you did affected other people in the team? It was like an organized intervention. It was not kind of just like slipping it in, you know?
And that's an unlock, though. It might
was
be hard in the
huge.
moment, but it is an unlock to get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a question I like to ask everyone that comes on. What's one thing leaders need to stop doing, and one thing they need to start doing to lead more effectively?
What's the best answer you've heard?
Oh gosh, the best answer, curiosity I've heard, lean in, be the talent developer, stop being the micromanager, stop being too down in the weeds. I've run the gamut.
Those are all good ones.
Yeah.
I would say start doing as a leader is seeing the whole human in your team. A lot of times we encourage employees to bring their whole self to work, and that diversity is valued and different perspectives are welcome, but that puts a lot of the responsibility on the employee. And so I think a leader making it safe and welcome, psychological safety for employees to bring their whole selves is super important, and for leaders to be able to see the whole employee. There's all sorts of things leaders are supposed to do, and I think that that's one of the things that they typically miss. And then in terms of stop, I think a lot of people are going to say micromanaging and digging into minutia and things like that.
I have this thought that I wanted to add. There was a forum, and I remember there were, 10 or 15 of us that were in a meeting with Jonathan Schwartz at Sun when he was the CEO. And one thing he left us with is, and this has stuck with me for all these years, he said, choose your manager very carefully, because they are the key to your success here.
Yeah.
And when you talk about all those things leaders need to do, like seeing the whole person, being much more empathetic, actively listening, how do you see, because a lot of leaders are chosen for attributes other than those things. So are we saying that we need a new way to choose leaders? Are we in the company so that we have more of that psychological safety, that empathic listening, that connecting?
I think that it's always been the same need. Like, we've always tried to pick leaders aligned to that, but we just haven't been very good at it. So it's not like, so you said, do we need a different way of choosing leaders? The objective is probably the same, but the mechanism is probably different moving forward. I think that human skills in leadership, which is that sort of, how to be a good manager, that's a part of leadership, will be more important moving forward. So all of those human attributes. What made great leaders in the past was the ability to set strategy and, pull out data from complex, challenges. I think those parts of leadership will be easier, and the human management of other humans part will be more important and probably harder moving forward, and that we should choose leaders that are really good at that human part moving forward.
Yeah. I remember someone at Sun, I don't remember who it was, and I didn't really know you well at the time, but we were just talking in a group, and they were like, she's just the best leader I've ever had.
Why? Why did they say that?
Because you made them feel included. That's what they said. I didn't know you well at the time, but that has stuck with me. So it's like, as I've watched your journey, leading larger and larger teams and that complexity and chaos. So whatever you learned from your previous bosses or what you want your leader to model or be like, you've done a good job of that.
I'm super comfortable knowing that I don't know the answer. I'm very self-aware about my limitations. I do not have a false sense of hubris, and
you don't have to have all the answers.
I'm so comfortable going into a situation then saying, okay, we have a really big challenge. Let's get all the ideas, because I'm positive that my idea is not the best one. And, just really getting people, I don't know how, I mean, it's a transparency or a humility or something, and whatever, but I'm really comfortable facilitating a big group of ideas and having everybody buy in to the process and coming up with what is the best answer. The best answer always wins. And it has never been my first idea. And I really do value everybody's, contribution.
Do you expect everyone at the table to have a contribution?
Yes. If you don't have something to add to the meeting, you probably shouldn't be at a meeting. It's probably not the right meeting for you.
Yeah.
And you can read the minutes.
Yeah.
But I really am comfortable as a facilitator, as a leader, servant leader. I don't know what the right term is.
I had a leader once that they were always the last to speak in the meeting, not the first.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when the leader speaks first, that shuts down the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people that have worked for me know that I'm an idea generation, factory, and that a lot of times I come up with things that are wacky and like completely not tenable, but it gets ideas flowing.
Yeah.
And but typically, whatever path we take is not what I've suggested. But I've always said to teams, like, whatever we do, we're going to be the best in the world. That's always the North Star. Whatever we're trying to do, we're going to win awards. We're going to blow competition out of the water. We're going to be the very best in whatever we've chosen to do, and we're going to make our mark.
Yeah.
So let's figure out how to get there. And I really like future back thinking.
Yeah.
I really like, imagine 5 years from now, when this whole thing is solved, what does that look like?
Yes.
How did we get there? What, customers love us, no flaws in the product, 5 stars on every review, Okay, what are the things that we had to stop doing and start doing to get there, and sort of do that future back exercise?
I love future back too. So it's interesting to note that creativity, curiosity, empathy, and understanding as a leader how you bring that mix together to build create the North Star and get the team motivated and engaged.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah. It all feels like overlapping circles in a Venn diagram. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like any of those pieces is a stretch. I didn't know what the word transparency meant the first time it was said to me. And it was way back when at Hewlett Packard, and someone that worked for me said, you're a very transparent leader. I was like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
What?
And they're like, you just say it as it is. And then I was like, does he mean I sound dumb? Like, what does that mean? What
You're
are you
approachable
talking?
and you're
he goes,
real and
and
you're
then
authentic.
I said to him, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And then he explained it. I was like, oh, okay. That's not an insult. Okay.
So Jenny, I just want to thank you for joining us here in San Francisco and taking me back through the journey of our time together, and also sharing your thoughts on the future and transformation. Thank you again, and can't wait for us to talk some more later. Cut.